What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week preview. I'm going to go through some of your topics and questions that you've put to me ahead of Game Week 29. There's loads covered in this. We've got Bowen, Reece, James, Spurs Defenders, Kulusevski, Son to Kane, Arsenal attackers, loads of stuff that people are talking about ahead of Game Week 29. So if you enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Just really quickly on Jarrod Bowen, I didn't really get too many questions, but I know a lot of people still own him. David Moyes has actually confirmed for once that he's definitely out, because a lot of the time Moyes says we've got some injuries, we've got some issues, and he doesn't mention who, but he has said he's not going to be available for the weekend, right? This was tweeted from Fantasy Football Scout. I think West Ham have tweeted it as well. So he's not available for 29. If I had him, I would sell him, because I think one of the advantages to keep him is that he plays in Game Week 30, but if he's got an injury and we don't know how long it is, he could miss that as well. And I know then he's got the international break to kind of recover, and the Game Week 31 to 33 fixtures are good. But there's lots of other players that are also good right now that are also good in that period, like Saka, like Kulusevski. So if I had him, I'd probably sell him, and I'd probably do it from -4 unless I had a really good bench, and then you could maybe just hold him for another week and then move him on next week. But players from Spurs and Arsenal, midfielders, got an extra game this week. They both play in Game Week 30, all the usual stuff you're sick of hearing by now, and the fixture on afterward ain't bad either. So if I had Bowen, I'd be selling him. Alright, Spurs Defenders, very much a hot topic. I actually wrote about them in my article for 888 Sport. There's a link in the description below if you want to check that out, as well as a few other topics going in to Game Week 29, right? What a lot of people are looking for is, should we buy them in the first place? Are they worth -4s? And if we're going to buy them, who should we go for? Okay, so let's quickly remind ourselves of the fixtures if I just switch to the FPL screen. Now, the next three fixtures aren't even that easy, right? I don't necessarily think there's many clean sheets for the next three. Man United, Brighton and West Ham, right? I'd say the same thing for Man United as I said last week when they played Man City. Do I necessarily expect them to win the game? No. Do I think they're favourites? Not necessarily, although obviously Man United are at home in this case, so that is a bit of a plus. But I do think they can score. So then you're maybe hoping for clean sheets against Brighton and West Ham. And again, neither of those two teams are necessarily easy. But on the flip side, they are playing 2 games this week. They do have a game in Game Week 30. And that is a big plus at the moment with the state that kind of FPL is in, right? So that's decent enough. And then they've got 4 pretty good fixtures. Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, Brentford, right? Individually, they're going to get 4 clean sheets in those. No, of course not. But you wouldn't mind playing a defender in most of those games. So I think there's enough upside to look to bring them in. And I think in some cases, they will be worth a -4. I don't necessarily think that Spurs Defenders are now the absolute priority to bring in this week. Like, in isolation, if I was bringing in a Spurs player or like a Robertson this week, bearing in mind most people own Trent, then yeah, of course, I'm still going for Robertson. If you can get through Game Week 30 without the Spurs player, then Robertson, of course, is better, but he's also a lot more expensive. And so for a lot of people, they're going for Spurs players, or Spurs defenders, not just because they play this week twice and they play in 30, but also because they want to fund another move. So ultimately, I do think they're pretty good. I don't think a -4 is that bad, especially if it funds another move, because you get the extra fixture payback straight away, even if the fixtures aren't that great. In terms of who to buy, Doherty's numbers are just ridiculous, right? 0.63 expected goal involvement. That's better than Trent, better than Reece James. But obviously, we put context behind that, that he hasn't played a huge amount of games. So we can't say that he's going to keep this up. But I think any wing-back in a Conte system who can attack, which we know Doherty can do, is going to do well, right? I think someone like Emerson Royale, I mean, I've put him on the list just to fill the space. He's not an option whatsoever, and he's not very good in attack from what I've seen either. So Doherty probably is the standout right now. Now, the question mark comes in, is Reguilon better in the short term because Sessegnon is out? And I'm kind of half tempted to say he is, because I think he'll play, he's been out for a while, he hasn't played for a while, so he's kind of well rested. So he could play the next 3. Whereas in one of the next 3, Doherty could miss out for Emerson Royale. Now, do I think that's necessarily going to happen? No. Would it be enough to put me off buying Doherty? No. But it has to be at least some small chance that that does happen, because the next 3 games, you've got the 12th of March, 16th of March, and the 20th of March. Now, it is Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, so there is enough rest time. But Emerson Royale, is he just going to suddenly be put on the bench for the rest of the season? I don't know about that. For what it's worth, I'm probably buying Doherty because he's a bit cheaper. But that is in the back of my mind that maybe he could play. Interestingly, Doherty has played left wing back a couple of times this season. So even if they didn't want to, even if he wanted to play Emerson Royale, he could put Doherty on the left. So Reguilon's not even completely nailed either. And I just think for the 0.5 difference, I'm going to go for the man. And I'm going to say it, he's in form and he's looked good the last couple of games. Yes, they were easier fixtures like the likes of Leeds, Everton. I mean, Everton kind of rolled over against Spurs, truth be told, if you watch that game. Everything that Spurs tried, it just paid off. And Everton just had no counter to it whatsoever. And I don't think Man United, Brighton or West Ham are going to be as easy, right? Which is why I think the clean sheets are going to be a bit tougher. So I do I feel when I'm looking at Spurs defenders, I do want that upside of a wing back. And I think Doherty's playing so well. They got no other competitions now to kind of rest players for. They're just concentrating on the Premier League. It just feels like one of those moments where all the signs are there. I know some people think like it's a trap, but I don't know. I'm going for it. I'm going for it. If you want to play a bit safer, then you go for one of the centre backs. Dyer, Davies, and Romero all look pretty nailed on. I've kind of semi-ordered this in order of what I would do if I was bringing in a Spurs defender. So Doherty first, then Reguilon. Probably Dyer. I mean, Davies is a little bit cheaper. And his expected goal involvement is slightly higher than Dyer's per 90 minutes. But I think if any of the three get rotated, the centre-backs, I feel like Davies will go first. I don't know. Maybe that's just in the back of my mind. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. Romero's nailed, and I feel like Dyer's pretty nailed as well. And Davies definitely looks nailed. But I don't know. Who knows? But I think if I was going for one of them, I'd probably go Dyer or Davies. I think Romero's just a bit more expensive for... I mean, he probably is the most nailed, but I don't think the other two are going to miss enough minutes to warrant paying the extra. And his goal for it so far just looked a little bit lower. So Spurs defenders, I think they're worth it. I think even in a lot of cases, a -4 is worth it as well, especially if it funds another move. I'm pretty much going to bring in Doherty. I do like Reguilon, but I don't know if right now, and kind of up until like game week 33, he's any more nailed than Doherty. So I'm just going to go for it. 4.7 million for a bit of the old Doherty like he was at Wolves could be decent. Okay, I'm going to talk about captaincy because a lot of people have asked me about Salah and would I go for Son or would I go for Kane instead? And the quick answer is no, I wouldn't. I've got Son, I've got Salah. If I had Kane instead of Son, I would still captain Salah. I'm going to use my triple captainship on Salah this week. I don't really have too many doubts about it. And I think a lot of this comes down to how much emphasis you want to put on perceived form, right? I think a lot of people know that Kane is playing really well right now. He scored goals more recently than Salah. And it feels like that's the only reason this conversation is coming up. A few weeks ago, like before African Cup of Nations, right? So it was a little while ago, I suppose. There was just talk about how we're going to captain Salah every single week. The only thing that stopped is he hasn't been banging in goals necessarily every single week. So now there's some panic for some people. But for me, Salah is just the best asset in the game. There's no question. If he's got 2 games, you're going to captain him. Yes, these fixtures are harder than he had in game week 26. But it's not like Spurs fixtures. It's not like Salah's got Arsenal away and Brighton away, and then Spurs have got Norwich at home and Watford at home, right? They've both these teams play Brighton away, so the only difference is that Salah's got Arsenal away and Kane and Son have got Man United away. Now, I would agree with you that playing against Man United's defence probably is a little bit easier, and possibly because it's at home for Man United, they're going to have more of the ball, the expectation is going to be on them to attack, and that probably will play into Spurs' hands. But I don't think that puts either of those players ahead of Salah. And I'm not even sure it's that close either, to be honest. Sometimes I think that like between 2 captains it's quite close. I don't know if it is this week. So if you want to go Kane or Son, I don't think they're awful options. But I don't think I've seen anything which tells me that Salah isn't the best option this week. I've put a few players on the list, again, just to fill it out. Trent, Saka, and Lacazette. I do quite like Arsenal's fixtures. I think they're both at home. I think, again, you got to differentiate between who gets 3 points and who's a good FPL option, right? Obviously, Salah is better than Saka and Lacazette. I'm not arguing that. But yes, Liverpool will probably beat Arsenal. But can Arsenal score in that game? Yes. Do they then play Leicester at home, who haven't been great defensively? Probably still won't have Fofana back. Probably still won't have Evans back. Yeah, they do. And I think that both at home is quite good for Arsenal. So outside shots, Saka, Lacazette. I think Lacazette is probably due a goal sooner rather than later. He's on penalties as well. So don't completely write him off. But the top captains are the top 3. Salah, Kane, Son. Maybe Mane if you think he starts both games, for example. But I don't think a lot of people own him. And ultimately, I'm going for Salah. I don't know what it would even take for me to go for Son or Kane, to be honest. I'd probably have to think that Salah was a doubt to start, because I don't put a huge amount of emphasis on what's happened in the last game or two. I think Salah's shown all season how good he is. I think Liverpool want to bounce back after the Champions League. Brighton without Webster. I mean, Arsenal are good, but I don't think they're good enough to keep a clean sheet against Arsenal. He's on penalties as well, like Kane. So yeah, I'm going Salah. And if you've got a massive argument against it, I'd love to hear it genuinely. Comments below. Let's have a discussion. Okay, question about Kulusevski. Is he a bandwagon or is he the real deal? And I guess it depends what your expectations are by is he the real deal, right? If we look at the games he's had so far, so 5 starts, obviously he got 14 minutes against Southampton, but 5 starts, 5 returns, 2 goals, 3 assists. Do I expect him to return once a game for the rest of the season? No. Do I think he's going to outscore Kane or Son for the rest of the season? No. But he's 6.1 million, right? So our expectation should be, or the question should be, can he kind of match or outscore players around that price? And I think he can. I know there's some concerns about whether his minutes are good enough, whether like Lucas Moura or Bergwijn might come in. I kind of spoke about this a little bit earlier on the team selection. Again, Spurs got nothing else to play for, so why not just play your best squad? As long as fitness is fine, as long as he's recovering between games and between sessions and stuff like that, why would Conte not keep playing him? He just looks all round better than the other Spurs options. Like Lucas Moura is definitely going to be better for direct run. If you want someone to pick up the ball and just run at defenders, he's better, because Kulusevski's not exactly quick from what we've seen so far. But outside of that, what can Lucas Moura do that Kulusevski can't? I think all-round player, he just looks better. And again, it's a small sample size. So do I think he's the real deal? I think as a 6.1 million, probably 6.2 million overnight before the deadline, the real deal, yes. Is he also a bandwagon? Yes, but bandwagons aren't always bad. So I feel like because he's got the double, because he's got the game in 30, and he's got good fixtures, he's playing well. Conte has Spurs doing all right at the moment as well. Let's not forget, a couple of game weeks ago, they were losing games against like Burnley, Wolves and Southampton. So again, expectations for me is not that Spurs go and blow away every team that they play now, but I think they'll get enough points. And I think because of the double, because of the game in 30, the risk is definitely lessened. So yeah, I think he's a good pick. I don't have anything bad to say about him. If there was like a ton of other options at this price, I'd say maybe rethink. But apart from Saka, maybe Martinelli, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, I think he's a great option. Alright, sometimes I wish I could just dodge questions, but let's get into this one. So this is for people that want to get Kulusevski. They're thinking of selling either Raphinha or Coutinho. Which one should they go for? Now, obviously, last week, for those of you on the deadline stream, I was asked a few times if I had both of these players, who would I captain? Which is another roundabout way, I guess, of saying who would you sell. And I said I would captain Raphinha over Coutinho, and that went really badly. I do think the points difference is probably a little bit harsh on Raphinha owners or Raphinha captainers versus Coutinho captainers, but it is what it is. It's happened now. And it'd be very easy for me to sit here and just go along with what most people want me to say. Coutinho's in form. Coutinho's done really well recently. Therefore, keep Coutinho and sell Raphinha. But I'm not going to do that, right? Raphinha's my boy, and I've got to at least give some kind of an argument of why you might want to keep Raphinha. If you don't end up doing that, fair enough. But let's talk about it a little bit. And a lot of it's going to kind of come down to fixtures. So I am going to go through a few different numbers here. And this might be a little bit difficult to follow, but just listen to what I'm saying rather than what's on screen, I guess. This is Coutinho's non-penalty goals and non-penalty assists per 90 minutes so far this season. Right? So it's this column here where the mouse is. So the 0.8 is against Man United. The 0.8 assists is against Leeds in the reverse fixture. And then between the next 3 games after that, he didn't do that great. And then all of a sudden, the double game week against Southampton and Leeds, he absolutely smashed it. So here people are saying he's not in form. And I heard people saying, if you take out the Leeds game, he's not even done that well. And then all of a sudden he's done brilliantly and the kind of tune has changed around him. And to be fair, Coutinho is just a good option, right? I'm definitely not sitting here saying he's not. 0.79 expected goal involvement is probably a little bit, it's much higher than any of his previous seasons. That will probably come down at some point, but it's decent, right? And if you compare that to Raphinha, who this one is here on FB Ref, he's 0.45, so it's definitely lower. It's definitely lower than last season as well. He hasn't been as creative so far this year. So then the other thing to look at is the fixtures, okay? So Raphinha has And bearing in mind, when a lot of us bought him in, we did bring him in game week 26. They did have Man United and Liverpool. So I think a lot of people question whether that was a good move to start with. Then they played Spurs, then they had Leicester. So they haven't even had necessarily an easy running game since we brought him in. And I still stand by the fact he should have scored against Leicester, but whatever. Fixtures coming up are Norwich, Wolves, Southampton and Watford. I would say as a run of 4 fixtures, that's pretty good. Wolves, I used to think it was tricky. I'm not quite so sure right now. I don't think Leeds will score a lot of goals against Wolves, but there could be one in it for them. And I still stand by the fact that Norwich, Southampton and Watford is a pretty good run. Whereas if you compare that to Coutinho, I've got Luka Dean and Ramsey, obviously same fixtures. I think the next 5 fixtures, I mean, again, Wolves away, you can say that's easy, you can say that's difficult. They've both got to play that fixture. So if you look at the other ones around for Villa, it's West Ham away, not easy. Arsenal at home, not easy. Spurs at home, not easy. And Liverpool at home, also not easy. I guess the only good thing is all those more difficult fixtures, Liverpool, Spurs and Arsenal, are all at home. So maybe that helps a little bit. But I just think if you look between the two, Villa's fixtures are harder. So then it comes down to kind of form, how well you think Coutinho is going to keep these numbers up. But again, if I just bring up Coutinho, a lot of his returns so far have come in specific matches. Okay, so he got the goal against Man United, fair enough. They did well in that game. He did well when he came on. Then he's had 7 returns and 4 of them have come against Leeds. So that tells me that fixtures do play a big part in, you know, how good any player is going to be, right? If Coutinho, Raphinha, whoever. And obviously then another 2 returns came against Southampton. So you could say that the fixture change for Southampton, the fact he's in behind Ings and Watkins is really helping him. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it was the fact that he played Southampton and Leeds. We're not going to know for a few more game weeks. So coming back to the question, I know what I would do. If I had these 2 players and I had to sell one right now, I would sell Coutinho because I just think that he's not been lucky, but I think a lot of the returns came in specific games and the fixtures they got coming up are much harder. They are going to have a more difficult time. Doesn't mean I don't think Villa are good, because they are. I think Gerrard's doing a really good job as well. But the fixtures they got coming up are just more difficult than they've had over the last couple of game weeks. So I would probably sell Coutinho, but Leeds, not been great. Under Marsh, it's really hard to kind of say exactly what they're going to be like. Against Villa, they were awful, really bad. Against Leicester, I thought they were all right. And I mean, Norwich suddenly becomes this big game, so is that going to put some pressure on it? Bamford's back as well, which is good. That helps Raphinha, I think, as long as Bamford can stay fit. It might also take penalties off Raphinha, by the way. But ultimately, I think because the next 4 fixtures is just so difficult for Coutinho, that is who I would sell this week. And again, the easy answer is just to say Coutinho is in form, Villa are better, Leeds are awful, Coutinho's just got points, he's full of confidence. And fair enough, if you want to go that way, I wouldn't begrudge anyone, of course, for keeping Coutinho. He has looked great, but I am a fixtures man, and I just think over the next few game weeks, I think Raphinha has been bad in terms of returns, and I do think they look really bad against Villa. And if they carry that, at times, I think body language kind of told quite a lot. I think Raphinha looked frustrated. And if the same happens against Norwich, I could see that spiralling out of control. And maybe then it would be a bad decision to keep him. It just depends what what side of the fence you fall on. If you think Leeds are going to carry on playing as they have done, then fair enough. You don't buy or you don't keep Raphinha. But I think the fixtures have been fairly tricky. Ultimately, I wish they kept Bielsa, to be honest, because at least he would have attacked. I think the fixtures have been trickier, and I think the ones coming up are decent, and that is what I would back. That's what I always back, so I'm going to stick with my man Raphinha. Whether or not it would be a good option, we'll see in 4 game weeks' time. But I do think if you look at where Coutinho has returned, those attacking returns, the goals and the assists, could dry up a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to disappear altogether, but it is going to be harder from kind of here on out for the next 5 game weeks. Alright, I think I slightly reworded this question, but let's talk about whether we should sell Reece James. Now, I briefly mentioned earlier on team selection that realistically not a lot has changed, right? He might miss Newcastle, we kind of expected that anyway, and he's not playing in game week 30. So should we kind of change our tune about whether it's worth getting rid of him right now? And I've got to be honest, in my team, I'm pretty set on selling him. The reason for that is, one, he's quite expensive, right? He's 6.2 million that he's gone up for, so he's holding a lot of funds. And the problem I have right now is Rice, there's no guarantee when he's going to be back. So we do have the international break between game week 30 and 31. There's a little bit of a break, 2 weeks. That's going to give players a chance to get back up to fitness. So that's why when you heard Reece James is going to miss 4 games, well, one was the Norwich game anyway. The next one was Newcastle in 29. Then it's Champions League and FA Cup. So actually, he's not going to miss really many more games than we expected in the league. My biggest concern is now that they brought him back and they did overload him a little bit more than they expected to in the Carabao Cup final. Tuchel even said that. Are they going to manage him a little bit more carefully? Now, if Azpilicueta was still out, for example, they might be forced to play James more. Or they might think, well, we can't risk him being injured for like a Champions League game or something like that. I think it probably comes down a lot to what you think is going to happen in the Premier League. So they are currently third. They are, 8 points ahead of Arsenal. Arsenal do have 2 games in hand. So if they won both those games in hand, they'd only be 2 points behind Chelsea. So actually quite an interesting top 4 race. Man United have played 1 game more. So have West Ham. And Spurs have played 1 game less. So if they won their game in hand, they'd still be 8 points behind Chelsea. So I think at this stage, top 4 looks pretty good. And they can probably do it without Reece James. So then the question is, how much will they risk this while they're still in the Champions League? And that is my worry, that because he came back and then got injured again, are they going to do the same thing next time? Now, a little bit different, because if he's back for game week 31, there is kind of a little bit more space between Premier League games than there maybe has been when he came back now. But they are going to have kind of Champions League kind of weaved in between some of these matches. And that is kind of what's pushing me towards selling him. I don't think it's necessarily a mistake to hold on to him and hope that he's okay by game week 31. But for some teams, like my team, if I sell him, like if I just bring my team back up to show you, if I sell him this week to get Doherty in, for example, which is probably what I'm going to do, I spoke about this earlier, then I lose a player that wasn't playing in 30. I can keep Luca Dean and Sice for now, who do play in game week 30 and hopefully would play and not be on the bench. So not only do I get some money for another move, I also get extra players for game week 30. And then if I put my self in a position where I can roll the transfer in 30, if he is back for 31 and I think that he's a great option, I can just buy him back again. A lot of people will be in a similar situation. So I think, to answer the question, like, you just have to try and put into context how much you think he's going to get played. Do you think they're going to risk him less and less because top 4 looks pretty good? And obviously Champions League is then going to become the priority. They're not going to win the Premier League, right, at this point. Like Man City and Liverpool are just the only 2 that are really in it. So could he be rested more? And that's what I'd worry about. The only thing I'll say is originally it came out as going to miss 4 games. I did see one journalist say it could be between 5 days and 2 weeks. So maybe he'll be back sooner, but I just don't think he's going to play against Newcastle. We might get embargoed news tonight at 10:30, and it'll be pushed on Twitter everywhere. Some quotes from Tuchel. But ultimately, any teams that played last night, they've not had a press conference today. So I think if you're in any doubt, I'd probably side with selling him. But if you're someone that's free hitting in game week 30, for example, or if you can hold him and have a team you're happy enough with in game week 30, you could hold on to him if you wanted to. Right, does Son to Kane for a hit pay off in the long term? Possibly. I do think, again, I've said this before, in isolation, Kane is a better option than Son. I just don't think that the difference is that much. So then the question comes to, how often are you going to captain Harry Kane? So let's look at the fixtures. So game week 30, definitely. I think Kane is the best captain option in game week 30, although Son isn't far behind. Most of that is because there's a lot of top teams like, basically Salah is not playing, okay? In game week 31, Salah plays Watford at home, so chances are you're just going to captain Salah, not captain a Spurs player. In game week 32, Man City play Liverpool, so possibly you might want to captain a Spurs player again. You've also got Chelsea against Southampton if you wanted to go for maybe Reece James, maybe Havertz or someone like that. But this could be another week that you could captain a Spurs player. So again, you have to ask yourself, are you kind of, I don't want to say brave enough, right? Because they are playing Man City, and I know Salah did really well in the reverse fixture, but it is a tough game still. If you wanted to captain Kane over Salah, well, suddenly that's game week 30, you could captain Kane. That's game week 32, you could captain Kane. And that's twice in like the next 4 game weeks. Maybe that is reason to take the hit. If we go on a little bit further, in game week 33, Spurs could get a double, and so could Arsenal. And if Spurs did get a double, possibly again you're thinking about captaining Kane. So I do think in the long run it could possibly pay off. But the thing is, once you take, it's not just taking Son out for a hit. for a lot of teams, you're then not doing a different move, or you're adding an extra hit to someone else. So for me, for example, again, I just bring up my own team because I think a lot of people are in this situation. I could do, let's put Doherty back in. I could do Son to Kulusevski, for example. A lot of people are looking at doing this, and Jimenez to Kane. Do I think that's a bad move? Not necessarily, right? Jimenez isn't great. There's not very many forward options, so bringing in Kane is good, and Kulusevski's decent as well. But then I've still got Reece James, who may or may not be out longer term. Who knows, right? Maybe if the injury is a bit worse or he's not back for 31, that's then a problem I've got to deal with. I also don't get to upgrade Ramsey either, so that's another issue. When it comes to kind of game week 32 onwards, it's possible. I'm not saying this should necessarily alter our decisions right now, but it's possible that I might want to bring in a player for captain, like around the 6.5 to 7.5 million mark up front. I don't want to sell Lacazette. I won't be able to sell Kane. So then I've got to find the money to do a Broyer upgrade, and I won't be able to do it. So if Burnley had a double, for example, which included Norwich, I'd probably want to bring in Weghorst. And again, I know people will laugh at that, but that is in the back of my mind. So I just don't know if this move sets up my squad as well moving forward, as if, say, I kept Jimenez, maybe even bench him this week, and instead do Ramsey to Kulusevski, which I think is a pretty big upgrade, and then James down to a 6.1 million defender. And I've still got Son. Like, you can obviously, all those games I just said you might want to captain a Spurs player in, you could just opt to captain Son as well. I think the not even a frustrating thing, but it just, people are almost like, the way they're talking about Son, they're just writing him off as if he's not brilliant. So yeah, I don't know if I can say much more on that. I think if you're looking to captain Kane, like 3 out of the next 4 game weeks or something like that, then yeah, he probably is worth a hit, because I do think week to week he's a better option than Son, but there's also 1.5 million difference. So if you bring Kane into your squad and take Son out for a hit, is that going to stop you doing other moves down the line? Possibly it will be. For example, for me, just to quickly come back to my team, I can actually afford this Son to Kulusevski move. I've just got to put it back in again. Just thinking on the fly now. Jimenez to Kane. And before any price rises, I can actually afford James to Robertson. And that kind of does excite me a little bit, because I get Kane in. I also get Robertson for this week, and he has Watford at home in game week 31. And I still have Kulusevski. And then arguably, it doesn't matter that I've kept Ramsey, because I'm not going to play him most weeks anyway. So then it just depends on how much emphasis I want to put on the fact that I can't upgrade Broyer to anyone else, so I just don't have any money. And if I did want to do that, I'd have to downgrade Robertson, who I've only just brought in, and obviously he doesn't play in game week 30, but also that's a -8, and it just doesn't sit right. Taking a -8 to get rid of Son, I could just take a -4, but I don't think my squad would be in a better place than doing it the other way around. So I don't want to say no, because I think it could do, especially if captaincy works. But I think all it takes is Son to outscore Kane in game week 30, and then I just think no one that kept Son is going to regret it. So it's close. That's all I can say. I think if you want to captain Kane a lot, yes, it could pay off. All right, let's cover Arsenal attackers. Which Arsenal attackers are worth buying to double up with Saka? So I do think Saka is probably the best option. I do think in some cases Lacazette's a little bit underappreciated. I know he hasn't scored many goals recently. I know it doesn't ever look like he's going to score a huge amount, but his goal threat numbers, expected goals, aren't that bad. And I do think at a time when we're struggling to fill the forward slots, if you don't have Lacazette, he's a pretty good option. All it would take, like with any penalty takers, for Arsenal to suddenly get a penalty or two, Lacazette to put them both away, and suddenly he's on for a monster haul. So I actually think, along with Saka, maybe it's a bit of bias because that's what I've got, Lacazette's probably the best option. Again, if you were picking again on wildcard, I've got Lacazette and Son. Is Martinelli and Kane a better combination? Possibly. The only thing I would say about Martinelli is, if Smith Rowe's back, which it looks like he will be, I don't necessarily think that Smith Rowe starts every week. I do think Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli and Lacazette is what Arteta sees as his best kind of attacking lineup. But it does mean that Martinelli will probably be subbed off early more often than not. So that is why I still think, if you've got the money, Saka is just the better option, right? Because he just doesn't get rested. He plays every game, and he usually gets pretty good minutes as well. And then Odegaard, the thing is, in some ways, I think that Odegaard maybe is better for minutes than Martinelli going forward. Because I think basically nailed on pretty much a Lacazette, Saka and Odegaard, and then it's really just how much can Martinelli keep Smith Rowe out of the team, because I just think the way the stuff that Odegaard offers is not necessarily great from an FPL point of view in terms of creativity and just his passing range and stuff like that, but for Arsenal he offers a lot. But I just don't like him as an FPL option. I think you'd only be buying him because you think he plays more than Martinelli. I think if they're both on the pitch, Martinelli is easily the better option. So to sum up, I think Saka is the best. I think if you can afford it and it fits into your squad structure, I really like Lacazette. If it wasn't for him, I'd probably go Martinelli. I'm just not a fan of Odegaard from an FPL point of view. I think really good player, good for Arsenal, not necessarily fantastic for FPL points. And I say that after he's just done really well against Watford. If you did enjoy that video, please do give it a like, hit that subscribe button. I will try and do a deadline stream tomorrow. I've got to be honest, certain sections of this video were a pain to record because I kept coughing and had to restart. So as long as the voice is okay-ish, I'll do the deadline stream tomorrow, but it won't be for 2 hours. I'm just not going to be able to do that. So it might be a little bit short, but I'll do my best to be on that. Thank you for watching. Good luck with your decisions. If you've got any other questions, leave them below. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you again soon.